Yeah, I got some new pictures.
Do you really need to hear it?
Yeah. Then shut it down.
Okay, why don't you do it?
Huh? Judge Irwin sang it. Good evening, and welcome to tonight's edition of Issues in Safety. I'm your host and producer, Joe Fitzpatrick, and I'm following the tradition of, over the past month, having local politicians. I have local alderman from the Independent Party, Larry DePillo. Larry?
Joseph, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming on. Last week I had the mayor on, and I shocked the heck out of a lot of people that I had on my way out. I invited him. He was gracious. He came on. We had a good interview. I invited Neil O'Leary to come on, and we're trying to work out a schedule to have him come on. And then the day after we have our caucus, which we'll be talking about, I want to have whoever our mayoral candidate is come on too. So I'm not favoring one over the other. I'm just letting them all come on and, issues in safety. We have issues here in Waterbury. A lot of it has to do with safety, and let's talk about it. Let's bring everybody on.
Absolutely, Joe. One way that people find out the differences between the candidates and can make an informed decision is if the candidates present themselves to the public. So you do a public service, and I'm sure the public appreciates it.
Right. Cable access is good. Informs a lot of people that can't make it to the Board of Alderman meetings.
Yeah.
If you could hear it. It's okay, and people could they can't get out to events and stuff. They could just watch the candidates coming out here, so it works out pretty good.
Well, we can talk a long time if you want about City Hall and shortcomings. We'll talk about something else this evening.
Only have 28 minutes. Okay, I just want to bring up something that I got a lot of comments on Facebook. People know that I'm an animal lover. And I have a couple Facebook friends, and there's this Waterbury no-kill animal shelter that's, I guess it's a abandoned building with a lot of brush. It's at 185 Huntington Avenue. I guess it's up by the Comcast place. They had a petition drive yesterday, and I believe they're having one next Saturday at Petco, which is right across the street from here at the pet store on Wolcott Street. And on August 27th at 8 o'clock in the morning, they're having a cleanup, and they're looking for volunteers to go up there. But the main thing they're looking for is a tax-exempt status. And that's what the petition drive is, to get tax exempt status. You know, Larry, you and I were just talking, that's a big problem here in Waterbury. There's too many things going on tax exempt. But me being an animal lover, I'm all in favor of it.
Well, I understand, Joe, and I mean, certainly the animals need a place where people can go and adopt an animal. Unfortunately, as we all know, as dogs and other animals get picked up by the city, they have sometimes a pretty short lifespan before they have to be euthanized. But if it's a no-kill animal shelter, then obviously people that want to bring their cats and dogs and pets that they don't want to see put down, gives them an opportunity for them to be spayed or whatever, and then people to adopt them.
Okay, just like the Animal Rescue Foundation, the one up in Terryville that burned down, and I've had their people on 4 or 5 times already. They're also a no-kill shelter.
Yeah.
I used to be a volunteer up there 20 years ago. They had a dog there that was there for 8 years.
Well, and what we talked about, and is you mentioned about the tax exempt status, and I fully understand that organizations, especially if they're volunteer organizations, and they depend on contributions.
Right.
It's very difficult to keep your doors open when you have to pay the real and personal property taxes in Waterbury.
Would that be considered too commercial if they did have to pay?
Well, it's however it's assessed. The problem that we have in Waterbury is we have a situation here with the state of Connecticut, and really it's something that needs to be addressed not only by the city but by our state representatives and state senators. And that's the fact that what the state has done is it has given a 501c3, which is a tax exempt status, to a number of organizations, and then those organizations come into Waterbury. Because we have probably some of the best prices
Right.
for real estate here in the city than we do around the state. They come into Waterbury, they buy up the real estate, they get their business established, and then because they're a 501c3 or a nonprofit, the state of Connecticut exempts them from paying not only real property taxes, but personal property taxes, which includes furniture and fixtures, and in many cases, they don't pay any taxes whatsoever on their automobiles or their fleets either. So as more and more of these organizations move into the city of Waterbury, it puts a larger and larger strain on the tax, the actually dwindling number of taxpayers in the city that has to pick up the difference. And this is one of the reasons why taxes just seem to keep going up and up and up. And it's 2 reasons. Number one, obviously the budget grows, but the grand list is not keeping up with the growth in the budget, and a lot of it is due to the fact of these nonprofits. Now, at one time, the state of Connecticut would pay the city what they called pilot, payment in lieu of taxes. They never really gave the city much money. They talked in terms of someday it was going to be 100 cents on the dollar. Well, I think today it's somewhere in the area of 35 cents on the dollar the state gives us in payment in lieu of taxes. We get that for the hospitals. We get that for state properties like UConn. But unfortunately, many of these nonprofits, the state exempts them from paying taxes, and then at the same time, the state says to the city of Waterbury, not only are we exempting them, but we're not going to require, we're going to force the city of Waterbury not to collect taxes, and the state of Connecticut will not give any payment in lieu of taxes for any of these organizations, which the state is categorizing as tax exempt. So Waterbury loses all the way around.
Right.
We don't get any payment in lieu of taxes, which typically is maybe 33 to 35 cents on the dollar. We're forced by state law to take these properties, these real properties, furniture and fixtures, and automobile personal taxes off of our tax rolls. and unfortunately leaves the Waterbury taxpayer picking up the bill.
Right.
So,
Larry, we have a call.
All right.
Line 1. Good evening, caller.
Hi, Larry.
hello, how are you?
Good, how are you guys?
Doing fine.
Good. There's a lot of taxes problems, as you know, and they put more money on construction. But all the money that they're giving these construction, did you put on Sunnyside lately? You
Yes.
can wreck your front engine.
I
But
received,
they didn't make the road better, they made it worse.
I don't. What did they even do there, Larry?
let me tell you about Sunnyside Avenue. I received a number of complaints on that street. My understanding is there's 2 projects going on there right now. One is the utility is upgrading utilities on that street, and they've torn up part of the street. The other is that the city is in the process of, they hired a company to put in storm sewers on Sunnyside Avenue. And my understanding is that whoever the contractor is has been absent without leave now for several weeks. And she's absolutely right. Matter of fact, I had to go down there on Friday. And you're absolutely correct. I mean, you do all you can not to break an axle on that road.
Hey, and if they,
Yes?
Yeah.
and if they don't fix it by the winter, you're gonna go sliding down there and really do damage.
Well, as I told you, I received a number of phone calls. I have every intention of being in touch with the city engineer on that situation on Monday, finding out when is the utility going to be finished, whether or not the city is going to require the utility to put a permanent patch on that road and not simply a temporary patch, which unfortunately CL&P and Yankee Gas are horrible when it comes to putting streets back in the proper condition after they're done. And then obviously what's going on with this private contractor and when he's going to be back on the job. And to be quite honest with you, I've had some issues with this particular contractor before. If he's not back on the job, then as an alderman, I will bring a resolution to the Board of Aldermen when we meet again in September to have the person's bond revoked and for the city to hire somebody else.
Well, you always do a good job. You get the job done, so.
Well, we'll make sure Sunnyside gets done before the winter.
And I know you will. You do much more than anybody else in this city.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate
You're
it.
quite welcome, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Tom.
One thing I want to comment on that, though, is this usually happens in Waterbury. They do it one construction job, pave the road all nicey nice, then the next one comes in and digs it up a month after they do it. At least this one might be coordinated. We might luck out, but hopefully, like I said, we can get it done before winter.
Well, we'll have to get it done before winter because this call is absolutely correct. If that road is not put in decent condition and the city can't properly plow it, it's going to end up being an ice skating rink.
Right, big help.
But I know.
But you should have a free one.
Well, maybe so, but the river's kind of cold that time of year if you end up in it.
Right.
Not if you do the payment one.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, caller. We have another call on line 2. Thank you, caller. Good evening, caller.
Hi, Larry, what would it take to get those laws changed about the non-profits? Can you limit the number of them coming into the city?
Well, I really don't know. I'll tell you what, I have had some conversations with Representative Celine Nugent of the 74th regarding this. And I do plan on following up. Unfortunately, in talking to the city assessor, it seems that the state of Connecticut is the 800-pound gorilla here. The state of Connecticut decides that they'll give a nonprofit status to organizations. They'll never ask, they don't ask the city for city input on any of this. And then under state law, tell the city of Waterbury that we cannot tax those organizations. And at the same time, the state of Connecticut exempts itself from having to pay any payment in lieu of taxes. So, we have an election coming up this year. I believe that has to be one of the issues discussed is what's going on with the city and how there's been a terrible shift away from even the commercial and industrial because we've lost so much of it onto the residential taxpayer. And if we continue to allow the state to have all of these 501c3 and nonprofit exemptions, they will, before long, certainly bankrupt the citizens of the city.
Well, I think they're already doing a good job of that, and do we have a list? Do we see a list of how many came in and how many are coming, recently?
Well, I'll tell you what I'll try and do. I mean, certainly the city assessor has a list of all the various organizations that are exempt and don't pay any taxes in the city, and I'll do what I can to try and get a complete list. I'll tell you what, if you really want to have the people's eyes opened up, maybe the public should start calling the newspaper and asking the newspaper to provide and print a list of all the organizations in the city of Waterbury and the locations where these organizations don't pay any taxes. I'll tell you what extent it's gone to. A number of these organizations have gone into the neighborhoods, purchased houses that maybe worth upwards of $200,000 in Waterbury. That's a nice house. They purchased them. They use them for halfway houses. They use them for dormitory, anything you want to name. And because they're a nonprofit, they take them off our tax rolls and pay zero taxes to the city.
Well, this is unfair to the taxpayer. Thank you, Larry.
You're very welcome.
Okay, thank you, caller.
Interesting. Interesting situation with the paving of the streets. I'll make it quick because I never make things quick. Steuben Street took 40 years to get it paved. CLP came up. Yankee Gas came up. They decided they were going to replace all the steel pipes with plastic. They hired 3 different contractors over an entire summer a couple of years ago. They dug the street up at least 3 or 4 times. They did such a horrible job. Sunnyside Avenue was good compared to what Steuben Street was.
Steuben Street's a hill, too.
It's a hill. And we had to live with it for 1 year, and then the city came along, and they milled the street and completely paved the street. They did a beautiful job, and that was after 40 years.